Boys, check this out. Probably saw it on socials. Introducing newest flavor of Happy Dad. Happy Dad with Death Row Records, the great flavor. It's seriously in my I'd say top 2 flavors. That and Fruit Punch is my favorite. Brand new. We just announced it about 3 days ago. I gotta take a little sip. Make sure you guys try this. It's rolling out across stores nationwide. So if you guys want to find the grape flavor, what you got to do is call your local store, blow them up, ask them if they have grape, and if they don't have it, tell them to order grape, all right? If you want it in your stores, tell your bars, your stores, everything. Shout out to Death Row Records and shout out to Snoop Dogg for coming up with this flavor, honestly, and for teaming up with this. This is going to be a huge, huge flavor. We're very, very excited. Let's get into the pod. Donald Trump Jr. Let's go, boys. All right, boys, welcome to another episode of the Full Send Podcast. Today, we got part 2 with Donald Trump Jr. Before we get into it, every week on the podcast, we're going to be shouting out bars that carry Happy Dad. So if you are a bar and you carry Happy Dad, or you work there and you want to get a shout out on the pod, tag us on IG at Happy Dad. We're always looking through the mentions. Thank you to all the bars that are carrying us. Also, we love doing podcasts at bars that carry us. Today, we're at Twin Peaks in West Palm Beach, Florida. Also want to shout out a few more bars that are carrying us. I got some pulled up right here. We got Halftime Pizza in Boston. We got Hurricanes in Huntington Beach, California. 1225 in Tuscaloosa. And then 50 Shades of Rose in Scottsdale, Arizona. Shout out to all the bars that are carrying us. Tag us on Happy Dad. Let's head in. We're going to see Don. Let's get in the pod. I love how we're doing Donald Trump Jr. at a Twin Peaks.
I know, honestly,
I love it.
Yeah, like as soon as I found out in the car, I was like, wait, this is actually hilarious. It's a good location, man.
Yeah, shout out to Twin Peaks. They've been supporting Happy Dad for a long time, so we always got to pull up the spots that are supporting Happy Dad, do the pod.
Yeah, this is dope.
It's been an interesting week, though. How you feeling, Steiny?
Good.
Steiny's still doing research, dude. He's still on his phone. He's worried.
No, I'm not. I'm reading
He's
into
like,
this.
what am I going to say? What am I going to ask?
No, dude.
Just let it flow, man. You're good.
I'm good to go.
You got this. Call your dad one more time. Be like, yo, Harvey.
This is what's so interesting about the Full Send Podcast, though, is I guess last week was probably C-Bum, and then now we have Donald Trump Jr.,
Yeah.
and then next week's probably a Bella Danger.
Insane.
It's good variety.
It's just
Dope
like
lineup.
like you go from Donald Trump Jr. to a Bella Danger.
Yeah, from...
After that, it'll be Stormy Daniels.
Oh my
I feel like this is your
God.
episode. This is your episode. C-Bum was yours. I'll take care of a Bella Danger.
You feel like this is his episode?
Yeah, I'm
I think
heavily
you're gonna take
relying
care-
on you.
You think you're suited to take care of a Bella Danger?
Yeah.
You are.
Yes.
Okay. All right. No, I'm ready for that.
I'm leaning on you this
What
episode.
do you like these podcast trips when it's like?
Yeah.
Because
when-
this trip we partied like fucking animals, but we're also by tonight we're gonna have 3 podcasts done.
This is the
Which is
best
like-
way to do it.
It's kind of like we're pretty productive, you know?
I'd say super productive.
Hell yeah. All right, well, yeah, we got another awesome episode today. This is actually a part 2 for us. We have Donald Trump Jr.
What's going on, boys?
Last time we had you on was with, it was a cool episode. We did it with Robert O'Neill.
Yeah,
it was
that's
actually,
right.
I think it was like our 3rd episode ever. So
Yeah, like
I appreciate
that was
you
before
always,
you got
yeah.
canceled with my dad and
Exactly before that.
and all of that. But I'm actually sort of surprised they didn't cancel that one.
Yeah.
But I guess it was early.
I know.
Do you-
Well, we appreciate you coming on like that early in the podcast when we were just building it too.
Yeah, I was curious. They canceled it on your dad. Do you think they're going to cancel this one?
You know, let's see where we go. But there's a solid chance.
Because in a way, you're kind of like more outspoken than your father sometimes.
Well, you know,
Not in a bad way, but
no,
just in
listen,
a...
I sort of got sucked into that world, right? Where everything became politics, and you know, I guess I'm just willing to say the stuff that I think a lot of people are actually thinking, but you know, are afraid to articulate. And you know, there's a social consequence to saying some of the stuff that I'll go out there and say. It doesn't mean that the vast majority of people probably don't agree with me. It's just, you know, when they try to cancel me these days, it actually makes me bigger. Does that make sense?
Of course.
You know, like I got a bigger platform because it means you're actually doing something right. You're pissing them off. And so when that happens, it's sort of good for me. But I understand for like regular people, it's not that easy. I mean, there's a consequence at your job. If you work at a corporation, if you work at this, you know, that woke deck is so stacked, you know, that for me, I just sort of, by dumb luck, just like found sort of a niche. So I was like, hey, I'll say this shit. And, you know, I promise you, it was a lot easier to be a real estate developer from New York City and, you know, be loved and, you know, as a young guy, you know, be invited to all the cool parties and all the cool clubs and do all that shit. And then, but there comes a time where you sort of hit that, you know, I guess that threshold where it's like, okay, enough. Like we can't allow this shit to keep going.
What was that time?
You know, I honestly think I saw it, you know, I was probably naive to it even early, you know, in 15, 16 when he started running. I mean, I believed in all this stuff and I was always, that way. But I guess for me, it was probably the Russia nonsense, because I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like, I committed treason? They have me doing 50 hours of testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee, the House for treason, like a crime punishable by death. And it's not like some clown, like the head of the Senate Intel or the House Intelligence Committee is out there on TV saying it every day. And I was like, wait a minute, dude. Like, I've been in the room. I know exactly what happened. There's not even like a pretense of like truth. There's not even like a little bit there, and it didn't matter. And that's when I saw it. And even then, with the stuff they did to other people along the way, I was like, the FBI said this, therefore there has to be something to it. No, there doesn't. It's all fucking bullshit. You know what I mean? There doesn't have to be any of it. And so I think they actually probably pushed me further into that, like, for better or worse, I guess I got a little bit of the Trump gene in terms of like, okay, you put me in a corner, I'm going to fight.
Yeah.
I did.
Do you have a team of people, when you fire a tweet, do you have a team of people that approve it, or do you just go with your gut?
The thing with social, probably like authenticity is 100% of the game, right? All right, thank you.
Gabe getting his camera
He
time.
gets close when he does that.
Every time
I
just to
appreciate
get on
that.
camera.
Good stuff.
Want to
Gabe.
sit down for a little bit?
He does.
love that.
He'll be there for an hour. So
Listen, it's 2023. It's okay that it's
I'm gonna have to remove your leg after that. But yeah.
But yeah, so authenticity is everything with that shit. So, and honestly, people are like, do you do your own social? I was like, do you think I could pay someone to post the shit that I post? Like they'd be sitting there like on pins and needles worried about their job if and when the inevitable cancellation comes. So no, you got to do that yourself. And when you do it yourself and you're willing to kind of, toe that line, works out pretty well.
How about the Instagram? No help with that?
No.
Do you like screenshot
So, well, listen,
and
like a
post
lot of
everything?
people, yeah, I'm not sitting there.
Because your page is dope on IG.
Yeah.
I always I'm following it, staying in touch.
But dude, it's funny. Like that's like the comment I hear the most. They're like, you have the greatest Instagram page ever.
Yeah.
And yet like I have zero growth. They're just crushing me. Like the people who have been following me forever, they can see me and no one else. It's sort of crazy what's going on. But no, listen, I'm not sitting there drawing up memes. I actually have a day job and stuff as well. But, I'll see the stuff. And at this point, I've got a big enough platform. I want to help other people that are saying the same stuff. So I tried it when I can. I try to tag other people and give credit where it's due. And so people just send me the stuff, and I'm just like, oh, that's not bad, or that's hot, and that's going to go big. And it's pretty amazing to watch.
Typical liberal. I like his page too.
Oh, great stuff. All those guys. Like there's a lot of guys doing really cool stuff. I mean, the sort of creative genius. If they could channel it into something perhaps more productive, they'd be putting people on the moon again. But it's pretty fun to be just a part of it.
That's awesome. Well, there's so much going on right now. Like we just thought, we did you before, and it's like I just love to get your take on some of the world's just a crazy place right now, man.
Dude, it is, man. Like honestly, I think I said it yesterday online, or maybe I might have said it yesterday just on my podcast on Rumble. It was just like, I feel like I'm waiting for someone to be like, "Hey, man, we're just fucking with you."
Seriously,
you're the star of the Truman Show. You know what I mean? And you don't know it. Like there's cameras following me everywhere, and someone's watching my life, and it's just I'm the only person that's not in on the joke because it's gotten so nuts, dude. Like things that like literally 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago we would have been like, "Come on." They're like real today. Like it's not a parody anymore. It's not a joke.
What do you think? Like, I mean, without saying specifics about what these things are, because obviously there's a lot of stuff we're going to continue to talk about. But why do you think it keeps going in that direction where like we're literally saying there's people going like this can't be serious? Like more and more of that.
I think.
Like what's the purpose for
it? We could go down the whole track of sort of the history of communism. And all of that. But I think they're just trying to break any sort of societal norms. You see the attack on the family. You see, you
community,
see
family.
They just like that stuff. That's a sign of white oppression. And like, what you mean, a family? Like, really? Like, is there a metric? Is there a statistic out there that shows that family structure is bad for the development of adolescence? And the answer is no.
In fact, the opposite.
Of course, it's the opposite. Like,
right.
and like that's the thing. Like. The most logical and common sense stuff to date, like, is just not considered common sense.
Why though? Why do you think that is?
I think they're trying to break down those things. I think it's a takeover of our youth. I think, literally, I do think it's, sort of the indoctrination push towards communism. I think you see that with, dude, you see it, honestly, like, look at, we're sitting here, the day after a terrible tragedy in, Nashville, Tennessee. Trans shooter shoots up, a school of, Christian kids, and it's the gun. It's like, you mean it's not like the indoctrination of all the bullshit that we're force feeding, children? It's okay for a 3-year-old to chop their dick off. That's totally normal. You can't buy a pack of cigarettes for another 15 years, but like, go ahead and do that. What could go wrong? All the gender affirmation bullshit. Like, I think it's just a literal attack on everything that we hold near and dear, everything that would be a historical, traditional, normal American norm. And they're trying to break it
I'm
down.
wondering when they're going to be like, you can't even do gender reveals when it's like you can't assume a baby's gender.
No, because everything's racist, right? Everything that today, it's like that's the religion, right? It's racism or it's climate change. Literally, like every problem in the world is one of those two things, according to the radical left these days. And like,
but
the
for
problem
what?
is,
for what?
I don't know because it doesn't make any sense to me. But you see the constant attempt at breaking down these systems, right? I don't know what's the purpose of having to show graphic, sexual details to children in elementary school, like you see, right? The bordering stuff that like pornographic material in text. It must be in a child. Like, why?
Yeah,
you have to destroy innocence at that, or like you can't let them figure it out. Whatever. And again, I don't give a shit, dude. If you're an adult and you want to be trans and you do it, great.
Yeah.
If you're happy, you're productive. I actually
Forcing it
don't
on
give
the
a shit.
kids
Like,
is
I'm fairly
that's the
liberal on the
crazy
issue. You force it on a 3-year-old.
Well,
you get parents and try to say a parent shouldn't decide, but your rainbow-haired freak show teacher should be able to convince a 3-year-old that they're doing this and permanently mutilate their body. That's fucking bullshit.
Well,
I think we got to call it out.
Yeah, I think because it's just the impression, like a child and the process in which they're learning. Like you're just if you're shown something and you're already questioning everything else in your life because you're learning everything, then you're like, well, maybe this is me.
I mean, you're a
maybe
kid.
this
You don't know better,
Like,
right?
how many
Exactly.
things
You're
did you
learning.
believe as a kid? Like, I thought I was, I could fly as a kid.
Right.
Like, my parents didn't let me jump off a building. You know what I mean? But like, you have, like, that's part of being a kid. You have an imagination. You have a creative process. But you see sort of the way that's all manipulated. Only one way. Only this. You can only believe that. And they're pushing it on people younger and younger. And then, again, I don't understand what the end result, because I'm a logical, rational human being.
Well, it seems like if you break down, you break down family unit, you break down community, you break down people's ability to get together and like be powerful. It's like you're able to control people more easily. That's what it seems like.
Of course, it is control, right? You see that. You see it within the hypocrisy of all the elites that want to push climate change while traveling on a G650. It's like, oh, that's fucking wonderful. Like, your carbon footprint yesterday was more than the average American in their lifespan. And yet, no, it's okay because we're doing good.
Yeah.
Like, give me a break.
So when you say the elite, do you think that's our government, or is it like a foreign government?
I think it's a combination. I mean, I think it's, I think, you definitely see the push towards this globalism and this, sort of one world decision-making process. But again, not necessarily even controlled by a government per se, but a very wealthy group of hypocrites that, push this stuff on it, but don't seem to live by the actions that they would espouse everyone else live by. And you've been seeing that for a long time. And I think that's why you see sort of the attack on America and so many of the things that we hold dear, because maybe we're that last bastion sort of freedom, right? We saw that, prior to the pandemic, you'd have been like, okay, the US pretty good. Canada's pretty good. England's going to be, pretty solid. Australia, New Zealand, like these are bastions of freedom and democracy. And it's like, really?
I guess after COVID, that just completely changed.
You saw it. And by the way, even here,
Completely.
right? Like so many of the people that you were like, you'd actually believe that stuff were like, okay, I'll be a sheep. Okay, there's no way that the virus started in the lab that studies the fucking exact virus in question, because the media told me it came from a bat 4 feet outside of that lab. Like, what? Like, man, like, really? Like, we've been so brainwashed. Like, the most plausible solution was always that. But if you did that and you said that, even if it was obvious and you were a doctor, you're fucking canceled, right? If you were a medical professional, you lost tenure. You'd lose your job. If you were a reporter reporting on this stuff, you were off the air. Like, when was it ever not like?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out is like, how did this start? Like, how did it get this whole shift to this side of like, everyone's afraid of either saying this or they're self-censoring that. Like, even in these conversations, I find myself here where like there's things that I would really love to say, and I kind of like am like,
I think
like,
they've made it very clear that like if you speak out, like with what happened to like your father and stuff like that, like
even the president of the United States.
They
can get
canceled the
deleted.
most powerful man in the world.
They proved that, like, if you speak out, you're getting fucked. Like, even look what happened to Steve, our boy, too. Like, you really can't. You can't win.
He kind of started
like
the trend.
You kind of can't.
And he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, you saw people forget. Now they're getting canceled because you saw the stuff with like Airbnb. Like, people were getting their reservation canceled because they were related to someone who said something that wasn't in line with that, right?
So,
you saw the PayPal push. Hey, if you're spreading misinformation, we're just going to dock your bank account $2,500 per instance. I'm like, but are you guys the arbiter of truth? Or like, is there some sort of neutral party? Because the fact checkers that I don't know that they've gotten anything right yet. Well, now, it doesn't stop you from fucking your account right now when they fact check you. 6 months later, they're proven wrong, but it doesn't matter because, the damage has already been done. They've gotten what they've wanted. We do a great job of being, we're dunking on them on social. We told you so. It was so obvious. But guess what? They still won. They got everything that they wanted to do. They weaponized all of those things. So even if they're caught later on, it doesn't really matter.
The scary part about this overall, besides obviously the details in it, is like the free speech of just like, I know certain things, I feel a certain way, and even that, I still feel a little uncomfortable. Like I self-censor myself to have certain conversations because I know of the outcomes, right? The idea of that itself is the most scary thing, because think of that concept if you're listening to this. No matter what you believe, whether it's this side, that side, up, down, I don't give a fuck. If you get to a point, we get to a point where people just go, oh, we can't talk about that. That's a scary society.
Yeah.
And it's even scarier now if we talk about all this AI shit, all this other shit that's coming on that's just starting to create like what's actually fucking real.
Oh, yeah. Well, listen, again,
two things there, though.
The educated elites that told you everything over the last few years, like their record, their batting average on what's right in the end is like 0. But, you're uneducated conspiracy theorist just using basic logic and common sense has been 100% right. And so to your point about self-censoring, I see it myself, right? I will sit there, I'll do some video for social or whatever it is. And I'm like, it's so clear to me what I'm saying. Yeah. And yet I'm like, you know what? There's a 0.0001% chance that it could, so I got to redo it again. Now, anyone looking at Occam's razor, right? Like the most logical answer is probably the answer.
Yeah.
Like anyone looking at it knows exactly what, but that's the point. The people who are looking at it, who will make a big deal of it, who have the power to cancel you, they'll tell you that the 0.0001% chance thing is 100% what you meant, not what literally any reasonable or decent human being would be like. Of course, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
And so you sit there and like, oh man, I got to redo that. Like even I have to think about this stuff because
but not even just that. I'm talking about literally not speaking about certain things because people are just like, you're self-censoring because you're just afraid because you know that that's what's going to happen.
But that's what's happening to the average parent. Like, you think the average, let's even, if we're talking politics, do you think the average Democrat thinks that a 3-year-old should be making permanent decisions about?
Probably not.
I don't think so. I
don't believe that. Like, but, guess what? Mainstream media, big tech, we're not in like an equal fight, right? There's, the sides, you've seen what they've tried to do to you. I mean, big tech, that's $1 trillion enterprise functioning as the marketing department for like a radical side of one side of an equation, right? Like mainstream media, same way. I mean, there's these sort of big blocks of huge juggernaut type industries that are literally functioning against you. So it's notice, no one on the other side, if you push that extreme stuff, what would be extreme, the 3-year-old example, there's no cancellation if you say that on the other side. There's no consequence. Did you guys see? I think you guys would appreciate it. Did you see this study? Like it's like 2 weeks ago. I saw that. Right prior to the pandemic, it was like something like close to like 50% of females identified as bisexual, and yet during the pandemic, like 0% of those people actually acted on that. And it was because we've created this thing where it's like, well, it's more socially, like it's cooler to be that than what they actually probably were, which is just straight, boring women, and that's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This stuff is just so manufactured. It should be so obvious to so many people, but there's a consequence to speaking out about it.
But how does to the other point? Like, how do you think it got there? Like, why?
Well, listen, I think it's been going on for a long time, right? I don't think this is a new phenomenon. I don't think it's a phenomenon of like the Donald Trump era. Of American politics. I think it was going on long before that, but like I think Trump brought out the insanity of the other side, right? Yeah. The overcorrection, that pendulum swinging so far that it just exposed so much more of what's been going on. Like
social media too changed it.
Social media 100%, but also the controls within.
Okay.
Right? Like you see sort of the people use the example of like TikTok in America versus TikTok in China. Like it's a psyop. Like in China, the videos that go viral are like a kid doing a physics project and like doing something like with his brain. In ours, it's like, how fucking stupid can you get and you're going to be a rock star?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's
why some of us are here.
Well, listen, I'm not saying.
Hey, listen.
Hey, we're talking about my IG page. Like it's like I'm guilty of it myself, but like, dude, there's a difference. Like if we're pretending this isn't a psyop to like destroy our country, whether it's just
that's crazy
dumbing down, our society, encouraging sort of just the stuff that would break up families with this, between that fentanyl. I mean, it just adds up. It's like, how do you survive that stuff?
That's just such like a high level like operation to me. That's what's like so fascinating.
Well, it's also so obvious.
I know. It's
like,
just crazy to like accept.
Yeah. Like, they're literally destroying us from within, encouraging the dumbest behavior, pushing this stuff that's destroying that family structure, all the things that would historically have statistically said, hey, you're more likely to succeed because of this. It's like, no, fuck all of that. Let's do exactly the opposite.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I want to ask, but you said that stat about the bisexual stuff before COVID.
Yeah. He's really interested in this part.
No, how do you think that's affecting politics now? Because I feel like there's so much focus on this person needs to be elected because they're bisexual.
I mean, listen.
But is that taken away from
wait, that's happening?
The identity politics thing is becoming a huge thing. And again, it's like,
but do you think that distracts from like what their beliefs are? Because now they're like focusing on.
I think it's just, again, you get social points for sort of saying
like it's a cool thing.
Like, listen, you saw during the beginning of like BLM and like every suburban mothers posting these things, and it turns out to be a multi-billion-dollar scam, but like they got the credit for posting their black square. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, give me like
the black square.
Yeah, like the people that were marching these things and wearing the sweatshirt and stuff like that. Like, how many of them are really activists? Like, come on. Like it's bullshit, but they got to check off that box. And again, if you didn't do it, there was a lot of pressure on you to sort of conform. Like, I saw some of the, people I know, like some of the most basic in a bad way, like, oh, really? Like this person's now a social activist. It's like, give me a break. This person's borderline idiot. Like they don't believe any of these things. The most privileged people in the world. I understand. I'm saying this coming from where I'm coming from. And they make me look unprivileged. And it's like, they don't actually believe it because I know them.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, I got to do that because, and so there's a lot of pressure to do those things. And again, one way.
Okay. So I have a question. Is there any way, do you think, to ultimately make any of this right or like fair? Because the thing is, like, whether you're this side, that side, whatever, I feel like everyone is self-interested in, like, they're all in self-interest.
Well, but listen, I think you got to, to the point of self-interest, like, you got to understand where this is going and where this leaves you in a few years, right? Like, where's the end game of all of this? Like, if you sit back and sort of, well, I'm self-interested now, like, I don't know that there's much of a future for us. So I think the way to end it is enough people have to have the guts to sort of step up and do it, right? They can cancel one guy, most powerful guy in the world, president of the United States. You get 175 million Americans, the other half, plus maybe some moderates who are like, okay, this has gone too far. Again, you can be, like me, like, I have trans friends. I don't care what they do as an adult. You push it on children, I got a serious problem with it.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like that's an issue. If you have, whether it's, I guess, Aurora, Colorado, all 4 trans shootings, where's the FBI saying, well, maybe there's a domestic terror threat?
Yeah.
See, here, the same people they called concerned mothers who went to like their PTA meetings asking about the indoctrination going on in our public school systems, they were labeled domestic terrorists by our FBI and DOJ, not like some lunatic on Twitter, but like by the highest levels of law enforcement in our country. But like, you're telling me that 4 mass shootings in recent time by a group that makes up, according to the CDC, less than 0.6% of the adult population. So you add in children, and it's probably like 0.2%, 0.3% of our population. You're saying that's not statistically significant? 4 major incidents in the recent time, identify as trans, non-binary, whatever it may be. We don't think that's a problem. Like, I don't hear any talk other than from a couple people who, perhaps like me, who are like, hey, wait a minute. Like this guy, the shooter the other day, like in their manner, you come after our kids, we're going to kill your kids.
Yeah.
That's not domestic terrorism. No. Well, they're protected. It's different. Like, we just need enough people to have the balls to actually step out and start saying this stuff. And once they do that, then the other's like, oh, wait a minute. It's a little harder.
Aren't they putting a stop to like that in like London and stuff like that? Wasn't there something that went on there?
I'm not sure. I know over there. I mean,
I heard some doctors are getting, like,
there's people
sued.
going to jail for
Yeah.
just being like misgendering people, like, I mean, I know that's a high crime and should be punishable by death and all, but like, calling a biological male a dude, like, I'm sorry, like, but again, like 5 years ago, could you even imagine having this conversation?
Nah. You know what's funny is, this is kind of random, but on TikTok, a clip, because I want to ask you about this too. Your father talked about how if he started a women's basketball team, he would just go get LeBron James, and it's all over TikTok right now.
Yeah.
No, but I love that. But Brad, that bodybuilder that you were talking about that just had the 2-year lawsuit because a guy transitioned into a woman and was competing in powerlifting.
Yeah, no, that was the Australian.
That's
right?
the
Yeah.
most absurd
Like,
shit. How
that
can
is the worst
anyone?
one.
How can anyone
So
possibly
I went to
agree
Penn,
with that? I don't get
which
it.
is the
worst
home of
one.
Leah Thomas.
Yeah.
Right, the
That's just
swimmer
fucked.
that was a dude and like was a journeyman, sort of average, very not even average, like male swimmer that goes on to win the female national championship. Like that dude went to my alma mater. Like if I was there, like I graduated in 2000. Like if I was there at the time, my friends and I, we would have showed up with a keg, gone to like the swim meets, and had like the greatest time in the world. Today we'd be thrown out of school for even questioning like the insanity of this. So what I want to know, like, where are the soccer moms? Right? Like, I'm a dad of a daughter who's a really good athlete, like, captain of her team as a freshman, yada, 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 sponsored by, like, she plays golf. And it's like, you put her against 15-year-old dudes that are a foot taller and stronger. It's like, it's insane. And yet I see the dedication that she puts into, like, getting better and being the best that she can be. Like, every day she comes home, she goes and works out, then she goes and plays golf, and goes, she's doing like a stretching routine. Like, she's a machine. Like, and yet, we'll go, watch like the men pros play, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's like, where are the soccer moms, man?
That's
like,
psychotic
I've gone
to
to
me,
these
bro.
things.
I don't
Like,
know.
I've done
Yeah.
like the triple header of like T-ball. I have 5 kids, so I got a lot. It can be painful, right? I know you're not allowed to say that. But like you do it because it's the right thing to do, and you're a parent, right? But it's not always the most fun thing in the world.
Yeah.
You do it, but like, you don't think there's going to be people going to get gaming this system? They're not going to arbitrage the shit out of this. Be like, I want to go to Harvard, trans. I want to be an admiral. You know what I mean? Trans. Like,
Yeah.
2 weeks later, you can go be any of these things. It's just gone too far.
I feel like most people I talk to now, though, in person, like everyone kind of agrees with that.
I've
I've never personally met anyone that like,
and yet the push is so against that, right? That's what it's what's interesting, right?
yeah.
I agree with you that a lot of normal people are totally either indifferent or just
Even like
think it's bullshit.
even women, like
Oh,
women
no,
I talk to,
100%.
they're
I
like
see it,
they
by the
think
way.
it's stupid.
I
as
see it
hell.
with like my kids, like their friends, like they roll their eyes. Oh, there's a furry in our class. Like they realize it's all bullshit, and yet the tiny faction of like lunatics out there has such control over the narrative. That's what's scary to me, right? Like the average person doesn't believe this stuff. I don't
think
think,
it's
and
like
yet
if
they
you're-
still have that power.
If you're over 18 and you want to do what you want, sure, do what you want.
Yeah,
But the forcing it on
100%.
kids and then like males participating in female
Well, it's-
sports,
okay,
is, like,
so the
that's
powerlifting
just
one's-
like so fucked
The
up.
powerlifting one's crazy because it's just like
But why isn't the bicycling one
Well, they're
crazy? Why isn't the swimming one
They're all
crazy?
crazy.
Notice
They're
they,
all-
they
any
also only
sports-
go one way.
well, this is the thing. This is
So,
what I was
like,
going to say.
what's the end game? Like my dad's thing about, he's right. He's going, I'd be the greatest coach in the history of women's basketball. You got LeBron, doesn't agree with his politics. That's fine.
How about the
like-
jail situation too?
Oh, well, yeah.
The males going to like
Yeah.
female
And,
jail.
and
I don't-
they're just going
That's
around.
a pretty smart
By the
one.
way, that's like the
I might try
greatest
to
move
I might
ever.
try to
Like,
pull
yeah.
that.
He might be on that one.
If I ever get locked up
my
again,
God.
They're just going
That's
around
smart.
impregnating all the female
Yeah.
prisoners. Like, like,
What the
That's
fuck?
actually
Yeah,
a power
like,
move.
hey,
Yeah.
if they got me for treason, I'd probably be like, I'd consider it. Be like, it's probably a lot more fun.
This fuck.
But it's happening. And if we're gonna pretend that people aren't gonna game that to advance them, I'm gonna get a full scholarship because I'm now the greatest female track star. Like, and again, what I don't understand is
That's a next
the
level.
silence from biological women, from mothers who've spent countless hours bringing their daughters to sports only to watch their scholarship get ripped out from underneath them. Like, where are you people? Like, I know you don't believe it,
Well,
but
it's
again,
virtue signaling.
Do you think
well,
that's
of course, but
that's
that's
what
what
it
I'm saying.
is.
What'd you
They
say?
would rather.
It's virtue signaling. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, I don't want to speak on this because, like, I don't want to look like
Well,
I'm
they are-
against
you
that.
think they're
Dude,
in
like
fear
a
of losing their
trans
scholarship.
kid is like your watch in Hollywood. It's like, ooh, it's the latest accessory. It's the coolest. You know what I mean? Like, because it's actually more powerful for them. They get more social clout by doing this, and perhaps even destroying their own children.
For
Like,
sure.
do you think any of these people, like, did they really ever believe this stuff? Like, come on.
It's a good point too. I want
Man.
to talk about we're talking about TikTok and China. I've been like really fascinated with just like what's going on right now with like this whole World War III shit. That shit's like
how close are
scaring
we to
me,
World
bro.
War III for real?
Well, listen, like the administration, like the Biden administration currently said it's the closest we've been.
Like, do you talk to
Since
your father about?
Oh yeah. Well, listen, he's the only guy out there. Like he was the guy that he's going to start World War III. Notice like nothing happened under Trump. Like, and by the way, you notice how he's the only guy actually
current day,
actually being like, hey, we got to end this shit. Like this has got to stop. Like our half of even the Republicans are all in. Let's go to war with Russia. They have 6,000 nuclear missiles. What could go wrong? Like
Everything.
What could go wrong, folks? Who cares? Right?
Everything.
Like it's insane. So the guy that was going to start World War III, according to everyone in the left, is literally the only guy that nothing happened to under his administration, but is the only guy now being like how insane this is. For by the way, the Ukraine, which is by many instances rated a more corrupt country than Russia. Like we're pretending this is like this angelic, bastion of democracy. Like that's bullshit. And again, I'm not saying that Putin's right either, because if you say that, then you're a Russia apologist. It's like, no, I think I can call out bullshit along all sides. I just don't know why America, with the problems that we face, with the shit that's looming over our heads, we're going to spend $130 billion. And that's just the beginning, right? There's no end in
What's
sight.
the interest there then?
Listen, there's
It's
a lot
gotta
of
be
people.
about
There's a
money
lot of people
somewhere,
making
right?
a lot of money.
In what
Right?
way there though?
Well,
What's so...
like the military-industrial complex is selling missiles to a regime that's using them, and we haven't been in a war of our own in like 6 months, so let's get in a proxy war with Russia.
But we had
And,
COVID.
like-
that was dope for money.
What's that?
We had COVID. That was
But
really
I guess
dope.
that's
Well, no,
two
of course,
different
no, but that's the whole
businesses,
point.
right?
Big
That's
war.
pharmaceutical.
Big War watched Big Pharma get rich for like 2.5
They got
years. We're
jealous?
like, our turn.
Our turn.
We haven't been in Afghanistan in like a year. Like, guys, we got to turn.
The
turn
big
the
pharma
spigot
guys
back
were
on.
taking all the hot chicks from the military
Damn.
industrial
Yeah,
guys. And they're like,
Yeah,
"Shit,
that
we
was
gotta ball up a little bit.
You got to end that one real quickly. And
So funny.
but it's what it is. You see. So it's funny. I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and I was like, dude, like even when you see like the woke generals now, doing their, I'm like, what the hell's going on? It's like, well, no, there used to be sort of this outlet when they retired from the military, they'd go work at Big War somewhere and get paid a lot of money and do all that stuff. But like, there is a general sort of, other than the insanity of Ukraine right now, like no one wants to be in these endless wars anymore on both sides. It's almost like a bipartisan issue, other than Ukraine, which has taken over the religion of climate change and all of that. But there's not that desire. So now the outlet is getting on these public company boards. All these public companies are woke. And so you could be like the general, but like he's with us and woke. That's why they're saying all this crap and pushing it in the military. I mean, Rob O'Neill had a lot to say about that. They tried canceling me a couple months ago. I said like, hey man, I spoke to some buddies in the teams and they're like, they spend more time doing diversity training than like shooting, like in the SEAL teams. And like I said it, and I put it out, and I woke up, and they're like, "Oh shit, Don, you're trending on Twitter. Like everyone's saying this is bullshit." I'm like, "It's not." They're like, Don, he doesn't know any of these people. There's no way this happened. There's no way this conversation is happening. And like Rob O'Neill goes, "He's 100% right. Like that shit is happening. It's happening even at the highest levels. Like I want my SEALs to be able to like kill bad guys. Like I don't care if they're blue, green, means nothing to me. Like let them do that job. Like the diversity training has nothing to do with their mission. And yet, if you listen to like sort of the woke people in charge, it's everything, and it's going to make us a stronger fighting force. They can't articulate how, but it is, and that's the gospel, and you must believe it. And if you don't, you're an ist and a terrible human being.
So how close do you think we are to World War III?
Well, like I said, we're the closest we've been since the 60s.
Yeah.
Right, and the Cuban... No, that's from the Biden administration. They said that. We're the closest we've been to nuclear, war fallout since the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was pretty close.
Yeah.
And if they're saying that,
yeah.
imagine what it really is, right? If
Even
they're like
closer.
actually out there like, okay, well, listen, it's not ideal. That's them whitewashing a disaster. And it's still like saying that out loud. Like,
And I think the whole China-Russia shit, how they,
Yeah. well,
she just visited Russia. That was scary shit,
She
bro.
visited Russia.
Little
They're
cheers.
forming an alliance. They're getting Saudi in there where they're going to work on like getting rid of the US dollar
I
as sort of
saw
like
that.
the petrodollar, right? So that means we
So
can't
right now,
borrow
oil-
the $32 trillion that we have anymore to allow us to live way beyond our means as Americans anymore. That's happening. And like the White House is having, the cast of Ted Lasso in to talk about like, we're not serious people anymore, guys. Like,
So oil can only be purchased in the U.S. dollar in the world
yeah,
right
that's
now,
that's
right?
basically, it's like the reserve currency of that, right?
Yeah.
So everything's traded in dollars, and because of that, it basically I mean, I'm
It
not
makes
the
our
best,
currency
sort of-
powerful, right?
Yeah, it essentially turned the gold standard into like an oil standard, right? Like where there was backup by oil. But you get rid of that, people start calling our debts. We can't spend as freely because we can't borrow like we do. I mean, if you managed your household like we manage our country, you'd be bankrupt. They can keep going back to the trough. You lose that ability because of that.
What happens?
It's a serious.
The dollar just collapses.
It's a total collapse of
Yeah,
probably
we're
our
fucked.
society, right?
And then
Like,
what?
Think of how
Fucking
much more we
chaos?
spend than what we earn. Like eventually, you got to pay the piper, and what we're doing is we're leaving our children and our grandchildren with insurmountable debt.
Does that turn the U.S. into like anarchy if that shit happens?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what it does,
That's
but it's
scary.
It's not good. I think you basically lose, and maybe part of that is that idea of globalism, right? You lose the hegemony that America has had, like the sort of the power they've had over. You lose all of those little extra things that we've had that the rest of the world hasn't benefited it, and that's a problem.
Do you know the significance of what happened with like the Saudi and Iran deal? Could you explain that to us?
Well, if the Saudis are now, and China is negotiating, peace deals between warring factions on the world, what does that do to America's place as sort of the leader of the free world? Like China's doing this, and again, we're worried about, Joe Biden's having press conferences about ice cream. Like,
That's real.
Is that
clip
real?
Was real.
he did it yesterday. Dude, that was like how he opened.
But is
his
that a real
thing.
You
clip?
thought that was AI.
Yeah, that
No,
was
dude,
fake.
I don't think
Holy
that's
shit.
AI.
Oh my God.
That's not AI. That's the problem. Like,
We watched it on the way
Bro,
over
so
here.
this is like, but this is a
Really?
big thing. This AI shit is like at
oh,
some
yeah, the
point.
deep fake thing is real, and but that's not real because I would have seen the fact checks on it, and I saw like a lot of prominent sort of right wing people calling that shit out, and like it's still up, so it's probably not a deep fake. But like, we have a president that can't understand sort of the gravity of a situation where 6 people and 3 kids were just murdered by a fucking lunatic, and like, that's
Why is that not being blasted more?
Listen, if it was a Republican, what do you think would happen?
Be blasted
Yeah,
everywhere.
of course, because everyone's sort of like, it's okay. We're just going to, again, the vast majority of the people reporting on it, the vast majority of people talking about it, the vast majority of the outlets where this stuff could be seen, they're sort of with the other side, and they're going to do whatever they can to protect it. And that's why, perhaps only some of this stuff is now coming out in sort of, again, the age of Trump, because the overreaction to it is so extreme that reasonable people watching are like, wait a minute. I don't know, there's got to be something to it.
Do you think there could ever be like a true like news outlet that is just not biased? Because all sides seem to have just their biases.
I don't know. Listen, like, people, they've done this thing like, if you don't like it, build your own. So people have gone out and done it. Like I did that, just with I created a news app, right, with some friends called MXM News. And it aggregates news from all over the place. Like we'll put the New York Times up and we'll put Breitbart next to it. Read both. Figure it out for yourself. Like 2 weeks ago, like my partner in the deal calls me. It's like, hey, dude, our bank account's at 0. I think someone hacked us. It's like, what do you mean? There's like $750,000 like in our operating account of this business that takes all sides, allows you to see both sides, like in an app form. And it's like, so he calls the bank. It's like, oh yeah, checks in the mail. It's a major bank, the PNC Bank. Like, oh, the check's in the mail. Yeah, we don't want to do business with you. We just closed out your account. They didn't even fucking call. Like they broke up by text. You know what I mean? Like they just sent you a check in the mail of what was in your account. Didn't tell you why. It's like, and that wasn't even like, we're not even making news. We're just allowing people to see both sides.
You're just aggregating.
And that
news.
was enough to be like, no. You can't possibly see both sides of the story. You must listen to, the talking points, and that's all you're allowed to actually
Well, this
see.
is the thing,
clear now.
is like I said earlier, it's the scariest thing is like at what point does the shit just implode then? Because it's like whether it's this side or that side, it's like wherever it lands, because at some point the pendulum always swings. It's like people should be very afraid of the fact that they don't want you to believe or to see certain things because maybe they're not on the same page. It's like, what if that swings that way and then it swings this way?
Well,
It's
correct.
like,
I mean, I guess they should fear that, because you would never want, if you're on the other, you'd never want that same stuff happening to you.
exactly.
But I think the way they look at it is they control so much more of the power of the ability to do that they'll take their chances.
But what if all?
Meaning they're okay with the idea of suppressing you because they know it's not likely to really ever reverse. And that's why it's just so important for people to actually sort of step out of that shell to start getting more comfortable. And again, you can do these things respectfully, right? Like, there's a way to have these conversations. There's a way to have the dialogue. There's guys like me that are going to go a little bit further because I have to, right? But then you can take my points and sort of mute it down and still talk about the facts that are underlying.
Yeah.
I have a question.
You could talk about the truth.
Why do you feel like you have to?
Dude, because I got 5 kids. I want to leave them a country like they could recognize. Like, again, it would be a lot easier for me to shut the fuck up, be a real estate developer from New York City. Would have been a hell of a lot easier for my father, right? They've been trying to throw him in jail for 6 years now, 7 years. They still trying to do it every day, right? Like on nonsense. And like, they're going to get him this time though, folks, but I guess, I don't know. You get pushed hard enough and like, it's a fight or flight, right? I guess I fight.
Yeah, I get it. Could I challenge you a little bit on that? Do you think that part of you does it because like it also does make you more popular and more polarizing in that sense of like?
No, because like, listen,
I'm not saying you're right or wrong.
Like I lived in New York City my whole life. Like I moved here because I had to. You know what I mean? Like I had to get out. Like where I've like I told you, I've done 50 hours of testimony before various congressional and Senate committees for treason. Like that's not fun. You know what I mean? Like when they're trying to go after your business and probably hundreds of millions in legal fees to fight back. Like that's not fun.
Yeah, I get it.
Like I do it because I got in that game. I believe it, and now I see sort of what we're up against. But like the reality is, like I didn't do it because it was like, hey, this is gonna be like I could care less about being popular. Like I sort of I was never tried to be in the limelight. Prior to that, like basically I got in the limelight when my father started doing The Apprentice because they were like, hey, can you do this? I was like, okay, sure. Yeah. But like there's nothing of me before that because I didn't really want to do it. But once you're sort of pushed into it, then you do it. And then I think perhaps the bigger part, like I sort of have a long history of sort of my politics and why I am the way I am, right? My mom, who passed away last summer, like she escaped communist Czechoslovakia, right? She did that. She was a good athlete. Like she was an Olympic skier, during one of the Olympics, like left the country and like didn't go back. Yeah. I remember seeing the picture as a kid of my parents' wedding. And I was like, well, why is my grandfather there, but my grandmother isn't? And it was because they wouldn't let both of them out of the country to go to their daughter's wedding because they knew they were never coming back. So my grandfather, brought me over there as a young kid. I spoke Czech fluently. They're a big part of raising me. And he brought me over there so I understood just how sort of awesome we have it over here, just how precious, like everything I've waited in the bread lines. I've seen what those systems do to people. And so, that started some of my political leanings and I've seen what those things do. That's why I'm sort of like, no, can't happen here. It's like, actually down here in Florida is a great example. Like all the people from Venezuela, all the people from Cuba, like they're all like super conservative because they've seen what these systems, like like, this is not our first rodeo. We've seen this crap before. It's not as nice as the academics want you to believe. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I then, I went to boarding school in central Pennsylvania, a little town called Pottstown. It was the home of like Firestone Tires. And it's like this sort of, it was like an elite boarding school. I get it. But like in the middle of this town that was like Rust Belt America, where just the rest of it was falling apart. And you saw sort of the decline of sort of, American manufacturing and all the things that made, so much of what the country was about. And so that started pushing me a little bit more into it. And, and then once they went after us, I was like, hey, I'm all in. But like, I do it because I actually believe this shit. Like, and I'm doing it because, if I've been blessed and I get it, like I have been, way more than blessed, like, but if I have that platform and I can use it to fight back, I'm going to do that. And that's it.
Yeah. No, I got respect for sure.
What's going on right now with the former president's like arrest and the indictment and stuff like that?
Dude, I mean, I legitimately don't even know, but I mean, it's like,
so I see a lot of headlines about it.
You sort of get desensitized to it in a certain way. Like I'm pissed off about it, but I'm like, oh, they're going to arrest me. Oh, you mean it's Tuesday? Like, here we go again, right? I mean, how many times, and then it's like, this is like the most ridiculous of all of them. And yet, you still got to deal with it. I mean, I guess they could try.
Is he actually going to get arrested?
Like, I don't know. That was the rumor. But then you also hear the people from, again, we lived in New York our whole lives, right? You hear people that do have sort of inside scoops and they're like, dude, the DA's office there, it's like, like even like radical leftists within are like telling their friends who we know, like, holy shit, like I can't believe this is going on in America right now. Like, and it's so obvious, right? Like it's so flagrant. Like this is the dumbest thing in the world, and yet they're gonna keep going. But hey, this issue is so important. But like, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's person, like she went to jail for 25 years for apparently trafficking children to nobody because we won't see those lists and there's no consequence. It's like,
Crazy.
really?
That's
Like, so you're
one of
going
the
after Trump, but this stuff's not an issue. You put someone in jail for 25 years for apparently doing nothing because no one else partook. I don't understand.
because they're not speaking about the names. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and by the way, we're like, well, Trump knew him. I'm like, you know how Trump's not involved? Because if his name was on that list, it would have leaked already.
For sure.
Like,
100%.
Like they did like the redacted list, and there'd be one name, like just
God.
unredacted
Holy
Trump.
shit.
So, but yeah, dude, crazy times.
I saw. What did you think about how DeSantis? I mean, this is a big topic too. How like I guess DeSantis versus the former president. Like, what did you think about what he said?
Dude, I thought, like, again, I saw the flip flop on Ukraine where it was like he tried sort of taking the Trump approach, like maybe war bad, and then like the donors. Dude, there's a difference.
So what did he say? He was against it first.
He was against it. He sort of took a weak Trump stance on it, and then he was like, "Well, we must stop it. Putin is an evil dictator." It's like, holy shit, your donors got to you. Like, and that's the difference. Like, that's what's good about Trump, and perhaps that's what's good about even if Trump, in 24, Trump is like a lame duck, can just go in and break all that shit up. You're not trying to get reelected again. You can just do everything that you need to do, and that's the difference. Sort of being beholden to your donors, being beholden to the establishment class. The Paul Ryans, like, this is great. Like, he literally was like, well, I'm not so worried about it. That's not a big concern. You mean the weaponization of our government against its citizens on stuff that literally every person who's looking at it objectively, including many on the left, they're like, holy shit, this is scary and bullshit. It's not really a big issue.
You're talking about the case against Trump.
I'm talking about the DeSantis sort of
said.
lack of comment on it, right?
Right.
Like, really? Like, you mean, like, to me, as a conservative, as a Republican, as someone who's been in those crosshairs, like, that's probably one of, like, the biggest issues we face as a country. You see Matt Taibbi, the guy who's the reporter who broke all the Twitter files about, what happened during the election before. Like, yesterday, he testified before the weaponization of Congress committee, Jim Jordan and those guys. And, like, the day he does that, the IRS goes and raids his home. Like, we still think that's a coincidence. Like, I don't believe in coincidence anymore. So if you can't call out, like, literally the weaponization of governmental institutions against your citizens, come on, guys.
So DeSantis has like big donors, like the former president's donors. Was that all just raised by like individuals?
Yeah,
and
well,
stuff?
no, you have big donors
there?
on all sides, but we did a big, we had probably the greatest small dollar donor campaign in the history of America, right? Blue collar Americans, like $33 average kind of donation. And you can see, you just look up the stats, right? The people donating to the other side, this guy's worth $9.12 billion. You know what? They want a president, when they call, picks up the damn phone. When they say jump, they jump because you need that check. You need that lifeline, right?
It's fucking crazy,
and so
man.
you see that, like with the donor class, make no mistake, guys, like the donor class, even in Republican, sort of, they don't have the same viewpoint as like the blue collar sort of, let's call them MAGA Republicans, right? They're gonna be tough on China, but not if it costs me an extra cent in my widget. You know what I mean? These sorts of things. There's a lot of hypocrisy there. So they know, Trump doesn't really need them. Trump doesn't sort of look the same way. And DeSantis, who's a career politician, like, guess what? He needs that money. And guess what? He needs that money again to further the goal and again. And so he's got to act when they say jump, he says how high. And that's the nature of politics. It's why they went after Trump so hard, in my opinion, because they don't want other people who don't need them in power.
Of course.
Right? They don't want that. They want to show an example. Like, this is what happens. Like, you have a good life. You're a fucking billionaire. You can do whatever the hell you want. Like, do you really want this shit? Because we're coming after you too.
Well, that's
right. And so when you see that weaponization and you're not willing to call it out, guess what? Like, they'll do it to him. If DeSantis ever becomes the guy, or any other Republican ever becomes the guy, like, it's easy when you're trying to pit someone against Trump, because they'll do whatever they can to help you so you can take out Trump. When you're the guy, That's a whole different world. That's a whole different story. And if that's the way you're going to handle it when they're doing it, generally speaking, how are you going to do when you're in the big show?
Yeah.
That's crazy because he obviously is doing a good job with Florida and the way he handled COVID. I liked, but it is interesting now when I saw you say that, he just has a bunch of big donors and he might be sold to them.
Yeah, when
'Cause
Paul
Trump is so
Ryan's
good
going out
'cause,
and endorsing, and Jeff Rowe comes and runs his super PAC, and Karl Rove is the out there. Like, really, like you want another Bush administration? That's fine.
'cause
Like,
we don't want to go back
if
to
you
that
want
either,
the
right?
Bushes, you can have that. That's a great avenue for you. But like, that's what it's been proven. You can hire a bunch of influencers to clip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To clip you dunking on some local reporter and like make it go viral. Doesn't
So
mean that's
where do you-
real.
where
It's
do you-
just that's the nature of that game.
How do you think these elections are going to go? Because I feel like even the the left doesn't really want Biden.
Well, I mean, but you look at him, and
Not yeah. I mean,
I guess the only problem is like you're sort of rooting for Biden because like the alternative Kamala Harris, and that feels significantly
So, I
worse
got
to
one
me.
for
so where do you think it goes? Who you like?
I don't know. I legitimately don't think he's capable of running again. But he didn't have to run last time, right?
Yeah.
He hid in a basement. And they called him out, and they weaponized COVID to sort of mail-in balloting and this and that. And of course, what could go wrong? It's the safest and most secure election ever. Why? Well, we don't know, but we said it, therefore it's true. And
Yeah, but do you think Trump actually has a chance again, or do you think
Oh,
they
yeah.
made him like look at like bad enough of a guy that he wouldn't?
Well, again, I think he clearly has a chance because I think people have woken up, right? Had they been like mild on the issue, had they told you the truth about anything, had they not like sort of perpetually lost their minds, like the mass hysteria every time anyone said anything, like, yeah, it'd be harder. I think looking at what the average person has now seen, like, I think he's got a better chance because I think they're like, hey, he's the one guy that will actually try to break up those systems.
Yeah,
I saw that Ivanka and the Kushners aren't going to be involved in the campaign. Why is that?
Dude, the campaign is brutal stuff, right? And if you're
Just because they
Ivanka,
played a significant role previously, so
yeah, I mean, certainly behind the scenes, they did a lot on on policy. It went down with the White House, but like doing it every day, like you have to have
So full life commitment.
You gotta like for me, it's like I'm gonna be just attacked for the next 2 years. Like you gotta. She's a mother, has 3 young kids. She's like
It's a mental battle.
She did her time. For me, again, I sort of, there's a little, different stomach for the criticism, right? And it's also even where she came from, right? Ivanka, she was a big part of that New York social scene, and she, the people that, now hate her, like loved her, and they were good friends, and like
Must be tough,
my
man.
friends were always basically like, rednecks from upstate. I did my thing during the week, and I'd go up to my cabin in the Catskills on the weekends and hang out with like real people, and like it's a little different.
For sure.
And so, you see, everyone you used to know and love. And like, by the way, there was not a person in New York City, a mother in New York City that didn't want their daughters to turn out like Ivanka. And then, boom, just like they did to Trump, right? Whether it was, how many rap songs was he in? Like 147, like all positive.
Yeah.
Like guys that, dude, like guys like in
But
that
everyone
world that
likes
I've
him.
literally had dinner with.
Everyone likes him behind the scenes, though.
Yeah, and
Even
like-
people like we talk to that I won't maybe say their names, but like,
Yeah, and you don't
But
want to
some
call them out,
people
but, like,
have said
I've had
it
dinner with some of the
publicly,
guys
but-
that have been like vocal against. I'm like,
yeah.
hey, dude, like I don't know, I have your cell phone number. Like,
Yeah.
we've hung out. Like, we partied together when I was younger. Like,
But maybe they want to say it, but their wives won't let them say it too, or something like
There's
that.
again, sort of the consequence.
It's
By the way, where the
tough.
hell's Hezbollah?
He just
I
left.
only came here for Hezbollah. You didn't,
we
you
were
didn't
trying
bring
to
this
we were
shit?
trying
Like,
to we were trying to get him to meet your father.
oh,
Actually.
dude, you should have called me on that one, man.
I know,
Like,
fuck.
that would have been
Maybe next time if he
Pretty
comes
epic.
back. Maybe next time.
Damn.
That's how
Yeah.
we could start to end the Ukraine deal.
Exactly. By the way, we can let Hezbollah broker this deal.
Yeah.
By the way, he'd probably do a better job than any of the idiots involved right now.
Probably,
right?
right? How do you think your father would end it in 24 hours? I've seen him say that.
Listen, I think there's just sort of I think you saw it, right? There's a respect issue for Trump. You look at Joe Biden and you see the way, and you're like, yeah, we can screw with those guys.
Yeah.
When you exude weakness, right? Like, it's different when you're a bully and you see someone else that's actually could. Well, all of a sudden you're not so bullying, right? Trump did it in South Korea. You saw, they're like, oh, Trump's doing it all wrong. I'm like, really? He's the only guy that did anything right. Because the same people were doing the same wrong shit for 40 years, but because they're elite and they, there's no consequence to failure in Washington, D.C., you usually get a promotion. They could just keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And like, doesn't actually happen. So, I think there's an element of, understanding. There's an element of respect. I think there's an element of just, the way he would get it done. He actually understands how to get deals done.
He does.
He
yeah.
did that for decades, like prior to politics. And, most of these guys in politics, it's like, it's like their first time playing in the game. You know what I mean? And like understanding how things actually work. And,
getting a deal done.
We're not exactly sending our best.
Yeah.
So I have a question about, I kind of want to go back to the AI thing and just overall, in general, how this all speeds up. And if we're talking about seeing real change and having real change, like if, for example, everyone, they watch this news outlet because they side here, they watch this news outlet because they side here, it becomes like an echo chamber. And then the things you find because of algorithms and the way social media works, it's just a constant regurgitation of those ideas. And then if you fall outside of that, you know, if you're left, you look right, you look left. And then you go, oh, that can't be right because this is what I'm listening to. Now you start to think about AI and the way this is furthering, because people don't necessarily do any sort of their own actual due diligence.
No, 100%.
Like, how do we like, I don't even want to say fix this, but how do people start to, like, you know, you try to make that app where you're like, hey, here's all sides, and it's, you know, they're like, fuck
and
this.
You still get canceled.
So it's like, how do we actually fight back against this thing that's going to come where it's like AI and this shit's going to get so good that like, you don't know if you said that, if I said this, if he said that. And where you're getting your information now, you might just see something and be like, oh, he said that, and I don't know what to think of it, or I think this of it.
You know, if you read stuff from the left, you read stuff from the right, you read 5 articles, like it's literally like AI just said, hey, change them up a little bit. Like, it's all the same shit.
Right.
You know, and that's sort of scary. I mean, I could see AI just basically replacing most journalists, right? I mean, you know, it was sort of the joke from a few years ago. Remember, you know, learn to code. Like a couple farmers lost their job. It's like, well, they should learn to code. It's like, well, no, journalists may have to learn to code because, you know, they're regurgitating nonsense. There's not many of them that are creating anything, frankly, new or novel. There's a couple independent guys doing great work.
It's also gotten really interesting to me because obviously I've been on social media for many years, not in politics at all, but social media and the way social media works, and knowing as like a YouTuber or creator, you have to make this like sort of clickbait content, this ideas. It's going to get people to be like, oh my God, this is scary or this is bad. And that's all just everyone does. And now it's getting into politics now where it's like, oh, I could be a news journalist and I could write this hit piece or this thing about this person and I'm going to get the most traffic.
And you read the article like, oh, but that's like, that's not even a big deal. And yet
that's
the headline
problem.
grabbed you because everything is generated by clickbait. You know, that's
exactly.
I think you just got to start like looking away from the mainstream sources. Like I try to, on like MXM, we try to like promote even some of the sort of a lot of the independent stuff. So you can see guys that aren't sort of beholden to corporate. Like I look at even, you know, you look at some of even the big conservative stuff. Like you look at their social media stuff. I'm like, well, what is that newsworthy? Like it's like these articles are like bullshit. And it's like why is that? Oh, it's just clickbait for some person. Well, so they get the click. It's not really newsworthy. It's not really important. It's gossip nonsense. And yet, like, that's their revenue model these days. And so
do you think
that's what's crazy, because it is about money. And I don't think people listening really understand maybe this fully.
Dude, it's all about money.
Is that
like literally everything in the world is about that.
Because it's like, if I can get,
it is these days. It's unfortunate, but like,
it
is.
It's all about clicks.
Like, if you want to figure out what's going on, follow the money.
Do you think
literally it's the most basic aspect of all of these things? You know?
Do you think they're going to ban TikTok?
You know, I hope they don't ban TikTok. You know, I think that would be a mistake. And I'm not a fan. I won't put it on my phone. I wouldn't want my kids to have it. I'm not into banning stuff in America. I wouldn't want their servers to be like, maybe host the like maybe make that independent, because there's no question they're spying on everyone that has it. You know, and you know, you do something stupid as a 16-year-old, which we all did. And like 20 years later, the Chinese government will weaponize that against you. There's no question. Like that information is being saved. Every click that you ever did, you know, they will use that and they will weaponize it against you. That's happening. So maybe there's a way to isolate the servers. You know, force that to go through a place where
that search history, dog.
Oh, by the way,
fuck.
Yeah,
boys are screwed.
Your face was so funny on that.
Wait a minute. Like, but I don't think that Facebook is doing anything less, other than maybe they're not selling it to the Chinese government yet. Like, you know, I'm not saying that like TikTok's the only evil actor in all of this. I think, you know, we need a lot more protections on our information that has nothing to do. You know, if you put a stupid video on TikTok and that gets used against you later, that's fine. If they're looking at your Pornhub search history, that's a little bit worse. So I'm lucky.
Especially his, dude.
You know, you guys are young. Like, I'm old as shit. Like the greatest thing that ever happened to me in life is that we didn't have cameras in our pockets 100% of the time. Like when I was in high school and college doing stupid high school and college shit. And I did plenty of it. these days, like I tell my
anything
kids,
been
I'm like,
resurfaced?
you can't be like a normal kid used to be, because like one of your moron friends may be innocently like videoing it or whatever, and one day that's going to come back to bite you in the ass.
We're
Like,
aware of that though, of course.
Yeah, you are, but like not everyone thinks of that. That
Yeah.
you know, a couple happy dads in, and like
Oh, yeah.
all of a sudden, you know, those inhibitions go away, and you
Oh,
say
yeah.
something like, it's scary shit, man. Like,
It is.
and you know, in today's world, especially you know, especially if it was my kids, like, you know, if you're not like radical on the other side, man, like anything you're guilty until proven innocent, not the other way around.
Mhm.
Like we've seen that change and shift has happened a lot, and so you just have to be a lot more cognizant of shit that you wish that I didn't have to be as a kid. Like I could be a dumb kid,
What do you
even
think?
even into my 20s, and do stupid shit and like have a good time, and it's like, whew, like, you know, I'm glad there's no documentation of that night,
Yeah.
but you know, it's no different than anything anyone did probably for hundreds of years of like stupid adolescence, right? But today, you know, that can ruin, that
Gotta watch your
literally
six.
end your life.
Oh yeah. What do you
Yeah,
think about?
facts.
Didn't Utah just pass something where you have to be 18 or older to use social media?
I think you need a parental consent to be on one of the platforms, which, you know, probably not. I don't think that's crazy. You know, especially again when you see what some of these platforms are pushing and, you know, where they're going. That yes, you know, let a parent make that decision. There's a lot of people that don't want that. Like again, you know, we don't.
Social media is
parents
fucked.
shouldn't have any
It's-
say about what your kid learns in school. I'm like,
I think it's kind of
Really?
wild.
Like-
Yeah.
like, really? But that's the narrative, and
There's kids that can have careers now at 16 because of TikTok.
I see
Which
it.
is pretty
I see
wild.
it all the time. It's like, you know, it's that had serious careers.
Yeah.
Do you monitor that with your kids at all, or like how is it dealing with that?
They don't have TikTok. I don't.
Do they
my
like
younger
ever
kids,
beg
they-
you
know,
for it or no?
They probably watch a little bit too much of sort of YouTube shit. Like, you know, there's, and again, you try
Every
to
kid
balance
does,
the
though,
best of it, but sort of.
It's kind of
you
like
know,
the new TV
Yeah,
for
like
kids. though,
yesterday,
too,
I was
right?
stuck at an airport for 14 hours. You know what I mean? I was with my daughter and her friend, and I took her away for spring break for like just a weekend. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, do that.
Yeah.
You know, maybe do some homework and read also, but like,
Must
okay,
be
like,
tough as a parent
it's
right
brutal,
now, man.
right? You know, you sort of see it. It's like, you know, it's a pretty convenient babysitter sometimes when, and again, I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing other things. I just think, you know, you're probably not doing other things 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so it's an easy thing. So I don't, but I have no problem with, you know, a parent having to consent to a kid using a platform. I think that's sort of no different than anything else would have been.
Have you experienced that as a parent where your kid has come to you and asked you some like an outrageous question where you're like, where did you hear that? Or
Oh yeah. You know, I see that, or like, dude, they're like, little kids are smart, man. They figure this shit out. Like I am, you know, I'm good on social media. I'm not a tech savvy guy per se. You know what I mean? I'm not clueless, but like, you know, probably have some boomer tendencies in terms of what's really going on. And like, you know, I see them and they're like, oh, Dad, just do this. I'm like, you're 10 years old. Like what?
Crazy.
You know, so it's almost like what scares me is not what I know they're doing. It's what I'm not sure.
what they're seeing?
It's what I don't know.
Yeah.
Because they're probably as advanced as I am. Like, again, I'm good at creating content. You know, maybe good at talking shit or making that aspect, you know, go viral.
Right.
But like, you know, behind the scenes, I don't know. So it's what they're doing. Are they having some weird chat? Is there some weirdo getting into their?
Has any of this changed the way that you've parented yourself, like your kids?
You know, we try to just be as reasonable on it as possible. You know, and we're not super strict on it, but you know, they don't. Only my daughter really has a social account, and
I see.
she's sort of limited that just to, you know, her golf stuff because she's just really good at it and
feel
it's
like-
good. But you know, that doesn't mean, you know, but they're
It's tough,
surfing and they're seeing stuff, and
and then if other kids
again,
have it, like,
I've seen, you know, I've seen that like weird text messages from, I'm like, is that your actual friend? Oh yeah, well no, like, well, how did they get that? Like, I think it was probably just spam, but like all of a sudden it's an adult having a conversation with a kid and you're like, what the fuck?
fuck.
No, dude, it's scary stuff, man. It's that stuff's real.
And for them, they're
it's
just
scary.
born in this digital
they don't
age.
know any different. They're
Yeah.
psyched to have a friend that they're talking to, and like, you know, that's the whole point. Like, kids are very impressionable. Kids are, you know, they don't have that sort of nefarious,
Yeah.
you know, outlook on life that I have after sort of experiencing this stuff, right, and seeing it with my own eyes.
I feel like you've gotten in some DM battles with some trolls for sure.
Yeah, probably more
Quite
than
a few.
More than a few. Yeah, you know, oftentimes. But you know, the reality is, what's sort of interesting about it. Like, I actually try not to. I don't even engage. I usually don't even read. I'll read my comments and stuff like that because, like, depending on where it is, there's a lot more, let's say like, my IG account will have a lot more sort of fans than like Twitter, which is just all hate. And that's fine. Like I'm happy to play in both worlds. I'm just not going to read the comments on a post I make on Twitter because it doesn't actually do anything for me. And, engaging in that battle, I may just battle with the idea, but not the individual, because I don't want to build up some other clown and give them a platform, to my 10 million followers or whatever it is. And like all of a sudden some douchebag with, 50 followers is like, I'll pick a fight with the idea, but not necessarily engage directly with them because like, why would
then they
I?
win. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying Twitter is like a lot of hate?
Oh, dude, Twitter's like 97.
Yeah.
But again, I still play on. We have
I love
social.
Twitter.
Yeah, I like it because I'm okay. I'm comfortable
Playing there.
in that uncomfortable space.
Yeah.
That we were talking about sort of earlier. Not everyone is comfortable in that space, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But like, I think, for there to actually be dialogue going forward, we all have to get a little bit more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Do you think your father returns to social media? Because I saw even his YouTube ban is up now.
The YouTube ban is,
Twitter obviously is up.
Yeah, how come he doesn't want to use
Is
Twitter?
Facebook up too?
Facebook's up, maybe do some stuff there. I think Twitter probably not, as, just because, again, they spend all the time, build your own, and then they put up every roadblock to you actually doing that. It sounds like a great soundbite, and then they try to, they don't want to let you on Apple, and they don't want to let you on the Google Store, so you can't actually get the app on, so you go through all this process of like building your own, like you did with True Social, and it's like, oh, well, then we'll let you back on Twitter now. It's like, well, I don't know. Listen, I guess it would be a powerful tool, but
Before the election.
there's a component about it. And even I don't know, for you guys, but like for me, it was interesting watching like Twitter before, dude. I was getting crushed. I was one of the original guys be like, hey, dude, they're censoring. Like years ago, they're like, how do you know that? I was like, well, because yesterday I was getting 10,000 retweets. Today I'm getting 4. Not 4,000, like 4. Like something changed. You'd have to be an idiot to not see that. And then when sort of the Musk takeover looked like it was going to happen, dude, like I gained like 500,000 new followers in like a period of a week, and like all my engagement was through the roof. And then it looked like the deal was going to fall through, and then it was like,
wow,
like it was like they were burning the files. You know what I mean? They released all the stuff that they were releasing. Then it looked like it was going to fail again, and it just shut it off again. Then he took over, and there was like a good, month or two where it felt good. But honestly, for me now, like Twitter 2.0 is like, it feels like it's actually worse than it was prior to the takeover.
What about it? Just
listen, I think the reality, you could fire a lot of people, but I think the inmates are still running the asylum, right? Like Twitter, like if you looked at like the donations by political party of like Twitter, it was like 99.2% one way. So like you can get rid of a lot of people, but I think, I don't know, Elon Musk's a genius, but I don't know that he can monitor each and every one of these things. I think the people in big tech are so heavily skewed one way that, they'll sort of figure out a way to screw. Like, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg could be like, you know what? Facebook is going to go neutral right now. Like if he got red pilled and like went neutral right now, I don't think it would change anything in the platform, because literally everyone that's a part of allowing these things to happen can put up some sort of little roadblock there. And there's just not enough time and manpower of someone who would actually want there to be neutrality to actually effectuate that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is there still like a lot of censorship going on Twitter though?
I just feel like I hear from a lot of people on our, on the conservative side of things that they're like, so there's no like, yes. Now, again, I think that's also a component, if I'm going to be on it, like I think there's a component of like, I just think the vast majority of the people on Twitter are also one way. But like, I can see stuff, and dude, you guys spend enough time. Like, when I hit send, like I know what's going big and what isn't, and what's sort of, okay, that's a fine tweet, and maybe you got to make a point, or like, and I know like, that's going to go hot. And when hot goes like, 1,000 retweets in the first 20 minutes, and it's like,
yeah,
it's like,
that same principle though, right? Where it's like that one guy can't monitor and change all of this, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of the same thing as like the presidency? Is like the guy can be in
100%.
charge, and then it's like,
and that's why I think you got to break down the systems fully. You got to, and that's perhaps what we didn't know going in first. It's like, the president is the most powerful guy in the world. It's like, no, the underling of the underling can just slow play something.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's why I want like pushing so hard for the people in Congress now in these investigations. I just want transparency. We heard so much about this is going to be the most transparent administration ever, but it doesn't seem like they want any transparency in a lot of these issues, origins of COVID, whatever the issue may be. So, let's get that and let people make up their own minds. But, we got to get there. And there's a lot of bureaucracy that's going to try to slow that spread of information out.
Yeah. It just seems like, I don't know, man. Like, it just seems like it's just fucked.
But I think that's the point. Like, I think they're trying Like, I think part of the game of the
To
other side is
just
to try to
give
make
up?
you feel hopeless.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that's why I don't, and maybe it's why I hit it as hard as I do, because I don't want to believe that it's over. I think there's a point where you probably get past a critical juncture where you can't go back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, maybe we're getting closer to that than we'd like to believe. But like, I do still think we can combat that, and we have to. And the other side does want you to go, hide in a corner, curl up in a ball, and die. They're saying it out loud, not even pretending anymore. So we got to push back.
Who's saying that out loud specifically?
You're seeing it. I mean,
Just with the moves they're making. Right?
Yeah, the moves they're making, the attacks on this, you see, every day. There's not sort of like, they're not pretending that they want the best for everyone. Like they would put people who believe what I believe in the gulags if they could. Look at the treatment of like the January 6th people versus the people from, the Summer of Love, of 2020. You can burn down buildings, you can take over government offices, you can,
What was that? The Summer of Love? What's that?
like 2020, like the
Okay.
riots.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
That's what he's called it, the Summer of Love.
it's the Summer
Is
of
that
Love.
when
but
they
that's
had
no, but
the-
that was the media.
Threw me
Remember?
off with that too. I was
Do you
like, what
remember
the fuck is
Don,
he
the-
talking
Remember
about?
the mostly peaceful protests? I'm like, dude, there's a fucking building burning
Oh,
in the
remember-
background.
the
Like,
best
the
part-
guy
hold
hit
on.
head
Do you
with a
remember
brick, and he's
the-
like, it's
hold on,
mostly
hold on.
peaceful. I'm like,
Yeah, I
"Ah."
gotta ask about this. Do you
Okay.
remember the autonomous zone of Chaz?
Yes. Like, but
Wait, hold
like, if that was reversed politically, like SEAL Team 6 would have
Yo,
gone in there
that
and
was the
killed
funniest shit
everyone.
ever.
You know what I mean? But when they
Wait.
take over a government building and an entire few blocks of a city, well, it's in the name of social justice. Like
No,
you can
dude.
go loot a Gucci store for a nice pair of kicks.
My
That's social justice. So it's different.
my
That
favorite
was
was
January 6th, you walk around taking a selfie, you spend 2 years in jail. Like, I don't know, dude. I'm not condoning, the few people who were violent, if they, but like, they'd lead you to believe that everyone was violent.
But-
It was the first unarmed insurrection in the history of the world. Like, but that was the narrative. That was the gospel. If you disagreed, again, you were canceled.
one of the craziest ones was during the COVID thing. Was like during the riots. It was like they did this thing where they said, well, because they're outside, like, and there's like thousands
Yeah, in
and
New
thousands
York.
of people.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, you're not gonna get COVID though.
It's not
That
like
was LA.
No, one,
That was
no,
LA
they,
too.
they did one in New York where they're like, it actually may be good. I'm like, wait, like, so that's not a super spreader. Like, a
So-
Trump rally was a super spreader event. This
That was
maskless,
funny.
Insane.
riot in New, like, that was actually, there's actually a way it could be good.
Bro,
for-
I was
for-
insane.
to
I was
prevent
reading
COVID,
these.
and I'm like, I don't, like, wait a minute, like,
I
they
couldn't
think
believe
you're
it.
an imbecile.
I couldn't believe it.
And yet they
that was
said
the
it.
craziest shit to me.
You know what's interesting is how's history gonna look back on like what
Look at these
happened with
fucking
what
idiots.
happened with COVID though?
Bro,
Like, do you think
it's-
it'll be like? I feel like it'll be the narrative that will be written, right? Like, I
Well,
don't.
no, I mean, listen, history is written by the victors, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it depends. I think right now it probably doesn't look good on a lot of those people and the government and and everything that they love to. But you'll allow this stuff to continue, and I mean, think of what we've
What a
learned
moment in time,
about
man.
Fauci and
Yeah.
funding the
Yeah.
They knew it all. You look at his emails to his colleagues and what he said publicly were like literally polar opposites, and like no problem. Like the media didn't have a problem with that. Like,
yeah, you just
they
forget
just
it.
lied to the people. Like we'll do it. It can hurt Trump. That's good for the narrative. Therefore, it must be the gospel.
Yeah, that's what it just got out of control, man. That's
I
what
think
I'm
if
just,
there's an elite, they looked and they said, "Oh, we got these guys. Like, we got
These
these
fucking
we got
idiots, dude.
society by the
and
balls."
we signaled to them that we're giving you the opening. Right, we
That's
got to
what
wear
that
a
showed
mask,
me.
and I'm really paranoid about something that affects 0.05. If you didn't, and I'm not saying it wasn't real, but if you didn't have a pre-existing condition, if you're a young guy like yourself and healthy, like you're fine.
Yeah.
Like statistically, you're fine. Like common cold, fine.
Mhm.
Now if you had a pre-existing condition, very real. You got to
course.
take that more seriously. But like that, everyone had to do it, and that more importantly, everyone just fell into line.
Yeah.
Not everyone, but like
And just
guys
how
like
long
me be
they
like, I
kept
don't
everything
understand,
closed.
but like so many people it was just easier to fall into line and be a sheep.
yeah.
And that was what was scary to me because I think that signaled to those, around the world that want to push for that kind of control over people that, hey man, it'll be easier to get
Well,
that kind of control.
For me, I have one example. I kept my gym open during the whole pandemic.
Yeah.
And then I got caught up in California because my gym's in California. And then I went to, I don't know, like 10, 15 court dates. And then at the end of it, they were like, all right, never mind.
So you just
Yeah,
won
that
that.
way if you were willing
Yeah.
to wait out the
But that's-
intimidation and could afford it.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the
bigger
problem.
part, right?
That's
Like,
the big problem.
That's what maybe they weren't expecting with Trump. It's like, we're in this thing for like, between like bullshit, like impeachment one, that like hundreds of millions of dollars, probably legal fees, right? Like, well, we can weather that storm. The average person can't.
That's the biggest
So they were
problem.
just hoping for just pure submission. And that's the problem. Like, that's all they'll accept, right? Like you've seen
Well, because they ruined a bunch of people's lives.
Oh,
man.
they destroyed lives. They destroyed businesses based on lies.
Right.
That's they didn't care. Like, well, guess what? Like, Starbucks was essential, but your little local coffee shop.
I mean, I could talk about this all day.
You know what I mean?
IKEA's
Like,
open the whole
Walmart
time.
is super essential, but like your local convenience store isn't. I'm like, well, why?
Bro,
because those guys can write a really big check to lobbyists and have, like, well, we'll get the exemption. Fuck that, dude. That's bullshit. And like, but it happened.
The same county that I was in,
the
LA County, and I lived in Woodland Hills, you were able, and it's okay to film pornography indoors.
Yes.
Because it's entertainment, and the same sort of like you can't be in a gym.
Yes.
So it's just like it was.
Yeah, again, there wasn't as big a lobby for the small business owner that no one could fight for that guy. That's that's why for me I was getting really vocal about this stuff at the time, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And turns out I was right. But we know that now. But it didn't stop them from destroying all these businesses because so many people went along with it.
Yeah. And even the gym, and they come back later and they're like, yeah, all this stuff's actually
but how much did you end up spending?
Oh, a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and you were lucky to weather that storm. Other people were broken by that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people just literally lost their business and their livelihood. Imagine I spent my whole life to open a gym and I didn't have all this other social media shit. I'd have been under. My whole life would be different.
Yeah.
Like it would be gone.
Of course.
And that's what happened to 99% of people because they didn't have, the other things that I was able to.
No, listen, hey, we're in hotels. Like,
Yes.
You think that was fun during the pandemic? Like, it's brutal. It's trying to keep, just even trying to keep people employed when you weren't allowed to operate a business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we did a lot with that, just trying to keep crushing the business, to just keep people on the payroll. Let's get through, 1 week, one more week. Come on, we can, you know what I mean? And then it took so long to ramp that back up. Like that was brutal. But man, like some of these people were with us for 20 years. Like you got to do what you can. But like, and then, they made all the, the funding for, companies around the world, but they carved out Trump Organization. I was like, well, why? Well, because he's the guy. It's like, we hate him. I was like, yeah, but how are we different than like, the hotel across the street that gets PPE funding to be able to keep their people around? Like you're not hurting us. You're hurting the dude making, the bellman at a hotel, but that didn't matter. That, again, it's like we were able to get Trump with a soundbite. It's like, well, what about the thousands of people that Trump actually employs? Like, you don't really care so much about them. If you're cannon fodder to them, if they can win a headline and, get the clickbait that they stuck it to Trump.
Yeah.
Like, it's stupid, but it's the game.
Well,
I hate to call it a game, but it is. To them,
perspective from my situation too is a little interesting because there's a gym up the street, there's a gym down the street, but I was like most out there on the internet. And so you can imagine how many accounts I have breaking the same thing, which is like not listening to their order. I had about 61. The gym up the street, the gym down the street, doing the same exact thing, even on a bigger scale, the one up the street, 1 count, 8 counts. I had 61, but that's because I'm on social media showing what I'm doing and people being like, oh, we got to get this guy. Like, because
but again, they're going to target that opposition. They've shown that very clearly.
Yeah.
Like I said, again, the perfect example is the Summer of Love versus sort of J6, right? And again, I'm not saying there weren't people wrong on both sides, but like, there's people that literally like walk through the Capitol taking a selfie. They've been in jail for 2 years without, like, I had some of them on my podcast, and one of the lawyers for some of these people, on my podcast, and it's like they've been in jail, like no due process. It doesn't matter. And then they're in DC. So they get a biased judge that hates their guts and it doesn't matter. And other people literally burning down buildings. They're heroes. Like, I don't understand.
Fuck,
well, how do you think they should have been treated then?
Listen, I think if someone did something violent, you got to sort of follow the law. I think if someone walked through, and again, like you look at the video now, and we've seen that, right? But they wouldn't release the video because they knew the video wouldn't line up with the narrative that they sold, right? Yeah. You see grandmothers like walking around, they're taking selfies, like they're just like, honestly, there are people in that building that didn't know that they weren't even allowed to be in that building by that point.
And some of those people are arrested?
Dude, some of those people have been in jail for 2 years. They did nothing violent, just being present.
Oh shit! I didn't know that.
They're still in jail.
What?
Yeah, no, but that's the point. No one's gonna even tell it. Like,
weren't you there, Brad?
Oh no. That's funny. That's funny. I got that picture taken down. You talking about the guy with the horns?
Yeah, wasn't that you?
That wasn't me.
That
dude.
wasn't you or the QAnon shaman?
That's fuck you guys. But it's funny because I posted that picture.
See, he's worried about the FBI coming to pay him a visit.
No. I posted that picture because
you're now on a list.
So many people were messaging me. Were like, "Yo, is this you?" I posted it and was like, "This is not me," and it got removed. Like for like inciting violence or some shit on Instagram.
This was Brad.
That wasn't me.
It wasn't,
dude.
okay, that's
Yeah.
that's what I heard.
100%.
Make sure everyone sees it so the FBI can track them down
We'll
using
pop it
facial
up.
recognition
That wasn't me.
software.
Dude. Literally not
Dude, you're
me.
on a list.
Fuck, that's not me, dude. That's some other guy.
Sure
Forget
it
his
is.
name.
Sure it is. Likely story.
So last thing, I guess we'll go back to like 2024. How do you see it playing out? Do you think DeSantis runs for sure? Is that
I think he
already
runs.
set in
Listen,
stone?
I think that's foregone conclusion. It's a matter of when they announce. But again,
How do you see that
follow the
playing
money.
out?
It's gonna be what it is. Like, it's fine. I'm not too worried about it. But again, follow the money. Like, you got to remember the political consultants that are getting 10% for your TV ad buy and 20% for this, and like, there's so much money to be made. Running a campaign that will generate a lot of money and billionaire dollars. Like, the political consultant class will not allow him not to run. They're pushing this because like there's the amount of money that will be made in that cycle by that group of individuals who are very political, who have a lot of power. Like, if he doesn't run, they don't make any money this cycle because we're not bringing them on because, frankly, many of them are the scum of the earth. And like,
So it sounds like he wins.
That's
Sounds
their
like he
livelihood.
wins then.
No, it has nothing to do with. It doesn't matter. Like, don't kid yourself. Like, many of these guys have done this over and over every
Okay.
cycle for years. They've made millions of dollars. Their candidates lose all the time. But they're still making money, right? They're still a TV ad buy for 9 months of a primary. And they're making 10, 20% every time there's a TV commercial of the spend, right? So they're taking donor money, every time there's a donor online. They're taking, some of these things like the donors stuff, like they're taking 90% of the money and 10% is going to the candidate. And then they'll run an ad and they'll run it with their friend who owns the company and they get a kickback for the commercial. Like, it's the biggest grift in the world. And so there's so many people that are going to, like, it's their livelihood and they're not going to not make millions of dollars this cycle as individuals by not allowing him to do it or saying, hey, take a pass, run in 4 years. We'll shore up your thing, finish off a term as governor as you just ran. Like, no. We're all going to make a shit ton of money, so you have to run. It's the only way. Like, the amount of pressure being put on that and the donor class and like that's what people don't get about, that whole system. Like, it's a big
Win or
money
lose.
game.
Win or lose.
Win or lose. No.
Yeah.
They're making money. Guess what? They make money if there's a TV commercial. It's why none of those people, when Trump ran in 2016, it's why he never got any of those big names because they're like, oh, that's never going to happen. I'm going to stick with Jeb because that's the easy money, right? If DeSantis is the establishment billionaire donor class, it's like, that's a shitload of money. These guys are going to stroke, 7-8 figure checks. We're going to get 20% of that each and every time, and there's hundreds of them doing it. It's a lot of money to be made. And they're not going to not make that money. They're not going to sit out the cycle and, do a couple congressional races, a couple Senate races. They're going to go
so you're
with the big
saying
money.
there's people that are like donor agents that are taking a cut
the donors
of each...
donate, and then the agents skim off of everything that the money was
So
supposed
they'll
to go
take
to,
like
right?
a standard like 15 off the donation.
15 would be cheap in many cases.
That's fucking crazy.
even on the donation, right? The people brokering those things, sometimes they'll take 20% of the the actual donation, and then you take $100 goes to a TV commercial, and then this guy's buddy is getting paid to produce the commercial, and this guy's buddy is getting a percentage of placing the commercial, meaning a percentage of the cost just to run the commercial. This guy's making that money, and there's guys that have organizations that are basically have their hand in every aspect of this thing to the tune of there's guys that will make 8 figures who are just political consultants. They'll make 8 figures this year on just that campaign alone, probably.
What a fucking world.
So there's
we
no
live in.
way it's not happening because, in my opinion, because of that. Now, you could say, hey, maybe the smarter thing is, hey, let Trump do it now. He's leading in the polls. He's got a shot. Focus on being good. You can be the leader of the pack in 4 years. That you get natural run. Like, that would make a lot of sense. But
you
there's
think
way
there's
too
no-
much. I think that would be logical if
They can't hold on to that
there's
money?
too many powerful people. They can. It could probably work something out with their donors. But again, the consultants do not want that to happen because, again, if you're holding on the money, they're not. You need the churn to make the money, right? You're not getting a percentage if the money's not being spent or raised, right? But they're getting, whether it's spent or raised, they're getting a piece of all of the action, and that's the big, scam in all of that game.
Wish it could have been Trump DeSantis together, right?
Yeah, there is something constitutionally about you can't have 2 people from the same state actually, running. But it seems That, probably not likely right now.
Is there any options on who you think the VP could be on the?
I don't know. I think it depends. So you know what I mean. I think there's probably a couple people that there's a couple people that I'd like, and there's probably a couple people that it could be, and I'm not sure those are entirely concentric circles.
Can you say like a group of 5?
No.
Can't.
I was trying to get the answer.
Yeah. No, listen, I think there's probably, there's probably some natural ones. And I think there's probably some that, people, wouldn't expect. I think you have something, you probably don't need, two Trumpian type characters. I think you'd probably want something to balance some of that out.
It's interesting.
But, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Brutal, but
Very.
interesting.
Definitely.
Very. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think this was awesome, man.
Yeah.
We
Thank you,
appreciate
man.
you coming
Appreciate
through.
it.
Good
Part
to be
2.
back with
I'm
you
sure we'll
guys.
do a part 3 with you
How long are
soon.
you guys in town?
We leave Wednesday? Or no, we might be here till Friday. Yeah, we might stick around.
Are you coming back for the...
They brought some
UFC,
food.
Miami.
Cool.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
yeah,
gonna be around?
I think I'm going to go down.
Yes,
Awesome.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
That'll
gotta
be
See
come.
it out there.
That should be interesting.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate
Hey,
it, man.
man.
Thank you so
Good
much.
to see you, bud.
You want to tell our audience where can they find like your podcast and all that and stuff like that?
Definitely. You can podcast twice a week on Rumble. It's called Triggered with Don Jr. That's been, sort of fun and just, a different outlet. It's something I never thought I'd ever be doing. But, even our side is just so afraid of someone saying what is. And again, that's my opinion of what is. But I don't know. It feels like I've been proven right on a lot of things. So I've been doing that twice a week, standard social platforms, basically everywhere but TikTok. Probably home on IG, Twitter, and Truth more so. And then just some short form stuff on Facebook. But, just everywhere trying to fight.
Awesome.
Go.
It's
Don
always
Jr.
great having you,
You
bro.
guys will have to come on the podcast sometime. Next time you're down
100%.
for extended,
Anytime.
let's go out fishing or something like that.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do that. Deep sea?
Yeah, we could do anything.
We went with those boys once. It was the best day ever.
Josh and Jake, great
Oh,
guys.
yeah.
That's how I started a lot of the stuff. But yeah, there's plenty of options down here, so we'll have
Hell
a good
yeah.
time.
Awesome. Well, thank
All
you
right,
guys.
thanks,
We'll see you
bro.
next
Thanks,
week.
guys.